In places like Riverbend Gardens, things aren't supposed to fall apart. A pristine neighborhood, smiling faces, HOA newsletters full of promises. But sometimes, the real danger isn't what sneaks in from the outside. It's the power we hand to the wrong people, the ones who wrap control in the language of order, who lock the gates, not just to strangers, but to those who need them most. My mother moved here chasing peace. What she found was a ruler with a crown of bylaws and a heart of stone. This isn't just a story about one woman's cruelty. It's about what happens when an entire community wakes up and decides enough is enough. The illusion of peace. Riverbend Gardens looked like something out of a postcard. White picket fences lined immaculate streets. The gardens bloomed year-round, and the river nearby shimmered under the South Carolina sun. For Evelyn Hartley, it seemed like the perfect place to begin her next chapter: quiet, safe, dignified. A place where the burdens of the past, the loneliness, the health scares could be left behind. Her son, Nathan Hartley, helped her move in, smiling as he set down box after box. "Looks like paradise, Mom," he said, half laughing. "Just don't let them rope you into too many HOA meetings." Evelyn chuckled softly. "All I want is peace, Nathan, that's all." But Riverbend Gardens wasn't governed by peace. It was ruled by Marilyn Greaves, elegant, sharply dressed, always carrying a clipboard or a Bluetooth headset. Marilyn was the self-anointed queen of the HOA. Everything from flower types to mailbox flags required her approval. She smiled for the community newsletter photos, but behind closed doors, she issued fines like speeding tickets and ran the place with the precision of a military base. At first, Evelyn thought she could avoid trouble. She kept her lawn trimmed, attended meetings, smiled politely. Then came the announcement. Effective immediately. All emergency gates will remain locked at all times for community safety. Nathan bristled when he read the HOA memo. "That's insane. What if there's a fire, a medical emergency?" Evelyn hesitated, folding the paper neatly. "I'm sure they have a plan," she said, more hopeful than certain. Still, something twisted in her stomach, a subtle unease she tried to brush away. Nathan wasn't so easily soothed. He called the HOA office twice, left messages expressing concern, but got only canned responses. "The decision is final. Safety protocols have been reviewed by the HOA board." Behind all the polite language, it was clear: obey or leave. The days stretched into weeks. Evelyn made friends with her neighbors, joined a small book club, planted herbs on her porch. Riverbend seemed to return to its sleepy charm, until that Sunday night. The storm rolled in with thick, pounding rain. Evelyn was alone, organizing some books, when she suddenly felt the world tilt under her feet. Her fingers went numb. The room spun. Her legs buckled. She collapsed against the floor, gasping, knowing with terrifying clarity that this wasn't something she could write out. With the last bit of strength she had, she dragged her phone closer and pressed the emergency call button. Miles away, Nathan's phone buzzed, waking him from a restless sleep. He answered without thinking. Her voice was faint, almost childlike. "Nathan, help. I don't feel right." Panic slammed into his chest. He grabbed his keys, bolted for the door, dialing 911 as he ran. "My mother's at Riverbend Gardens. She needs an ambulance. Now." The dispatcher assured him help was on the way. At Riverbend's gated entrance, red and blue lights reflected off the wet pavement. The ambulance arrived in record time. The paramedics leapt out, only to find the emergency gate locked tight with thick industrial padlocks. They banged on the metal, called the guard shack. No answer. Evelyn was just yards away dying, while help stood outside, helpless. One of the paramedics spotted Marilyn Greaves, strolling casually with an umbrella and a small white dog. They sprinted to her. "Ma'am, we need the gate opened now, medical emergency." Marilyn didn't even pause. HOA rules. she said coolly. Emergency access must be authorized beforehand. The paramedic stared at her in disbelief. If we wait, she could die. Marilyn smiled thinly. Rules are rules. Use the main entrance. The main entrance was 2 winding blocks away, precious minutes lost. The senior paramedic didn't hesitate. He grabbed the crowbar from the back of the ambulance, wedged it under the gate latch, and with a grunt of fury, shattered the padlock. They rushed through the broken gate, racing toward Evelyn's house. Nathan arrived just in time to see the paramedics carrying his mother out on a stretcher. Oxygen mask strapped to her face. She was pale, fragile, barely conscious. He followed the ambulance to the hospital, white-knuckling the steering wheel the whole way, rage and terror boiling inside him. Later, in the sterile, fluorescent hospital hallway, the doctor pulled him aside. She's stable, but another 5 minutes, Jim, and she wouldn't have made it. Nathan stared at the floor, hands trembling. In that moment, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was negligence. It was arrogance. And someone was going to answer for it. The quiet rebellion. Nathan sat in his truck outside the hospital, the rain beating hard against the windshield. The world outside blurred and distorted. He clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Marilyn Greaves didn't just bend the rules. She made herself judge, jury, and executioner. And tonight, Evelyn had almost been the price. Nathan could still hear the doctor's words echoing, 5 more minutes, and it would have been too late. So, he wasn't going to let this be swept under the rug. Not like everything else she'd gotten away with. Not this time. The first thing Nathan did was contact the paramedics. They were furious, not just professionally, but personally. One of them, Jason Morales, had lost a relative years ago in a similar delay. He promised to back Nathan any way he could. They agreed to file formal incident reports documenting how Marilyn's refusal to open the gate had directly endangered Evelyn's life. Next, Nathan requested the 911 call logs and radio dispatch recordings under Freedom of Information laws. He wasn't thinking small anymore. He was building a case, quietly. He began talking to his mother's neighbors. What he found shocked even him. An elderly veteran fined $500 for planting a non-approved American flag holder. A single mother whose child's bicycle was confiscated for being left on the lawn too long. A wheelchair-bound man denied a ramp modification because it violated visual harmony. Stories poured out like a dam had burst. Fear had kept everyone silent for years. Fear of retaliation, fines, eviction threats. Nathan listened carefully, collecting names, times, incidents. Every signature, every testimony was another stone for the foundation he was building. This wasn't just about his mother anymore. It was about every single life Marilyn had trampled under the polished veneer of community standards. And then came the real break. A neighbor, Maggie Rowe, approached him quietly one evening, wringing her hands. "You should see this," she whispered, pressing a thumb drive into his palm. On it were years of HOA financial records receipts, suspicious payouts, and private emails between Marilyn and an executive from Goldstone Development Corp. Emails openly discussing plans to quietly sell portions of Riverbend Gardens communal land for commercial development without a community vote. In one particularly damning message, Marilyn wrote, "The old ones won't even realize it's happening until it's too late. We control the communications." Nathan's stomach churned with rage. Marilyn hadn't just endangered Evelyn's life. She had been systematically stealing Riverbend Gardens out from under its residents. This was bigger than negligence. This was organized fraud. And now, Nathan had the proof. But he knew he couldn't simply drop this in front of the residents. Not yet. Marilyn still held the microphone, still controlled the narrative. She would spin, deny, manipulate, unless he caught her off guard. Publicly. With no escape route. He needed a stage. He needed witnesses. He needed a way to make Riverbend Gardens see the truth with their own eyes and be unable to look away. Nathan quietly organized a special emergency meeting through the HOA's bylaws, something even Marilyn couldn't legally refuse without drawing attention. The agenda was set. Updates on emergency procedures, community development initiatives. Simple, innocuous, exactly the kind of bait Marilyn couldn't resist, as she prepared for another night of polished speeches and manufactured applause. Nathan was preparing something else entirely. He wasn't coming to argue. He was coming to end her reign, the fall of a queen. The night of the special emergency meeting. Riverbend Gardens Community Hall was packed tighter than anyone could remember. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years sat shoulder to shoulder, their faces tight with suspicion, hope, and something new stirring beneath the surface anger. At the front of the room, Marilyn Greaves stood behind the podium, the epitome of calm confidence. She adjusted the microphone, her diamond bracelet flashing under the fluorescent lights. "Thank you all for coming," she purred. "Tonight, we'll be discussing the exciting future of Riverbend Gardens." Nathan sat near the back, heart pounding in his chest, but not from fear, from readiness. He watched as Marilyn slid into her speech, boasting about enhanced security measures and upcoming opportunities for community growth. The lies tasted bitter in the air. When she finally paused, smiling that politician's smile, Nathan rose quietly to his feet. "Before we move forward," he said, his voice carrying clear and strong, "I have some important information the community deserves to see." Marilyn's smile twitched. A flicker of something, was it fear, crossed her face. Nathan walked calmly to the front, inserted a USB drive into the projector laptop. The screen behind him flickered, then blazed to life. First slide, financial records. Unexplained payments from the HOA account to shell companies. Second slide. Email exchanges between Marilyn and executives at Goldstone Development, discussing secret sales, using words like quietly pressure out the elderly and maximize return before public notices. Murmurs erupted around the room. Third slide. Security footage from the night of Evelyn's emergency, showing paramedics battling the locked gate while Marilyn walked away, unconcerned. Gasps. Sharp. Horrified whispers. Nathan turned to the room. This isn't about security. This isn't about beautification. This was about power, profit, and putting lives at risk. Marilyn tried to cut him off. "These documents are private. This isn't illegal." But her voice faltered when two figures stepped from the crowd, Detective Perez from the Charleston Police Department and Agent Collins from the State Attorney's Office. They spoke with authority that crushed the air out of the room. "Miss Joda Greaves," Agent Collins said, "you're under investigation for embezzlement, obstruction of emergency services, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud." Silence fell so heavy, you could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Someone in the back muttered, "Finally." Another neighbor stood up and said louder, "Get her out of here." Marilyn's mask cracked. Her hands trembled as she backed away from the podium, eyes darting wildly around the room. The people she once controlled like pawns were now standing shoulder to shoulder against her. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words never came. Only the clink of handcuffs being fastened behind her back echoed through the hall. As the officers led Marilyn away, Nathan met her gaze one last time. There was no hatred in his eyes, only the cold. "Final truth, you did this to yourself." Outside, the community buzzed, a hive coming back to life after a long winter. Neighbors shook Nathan's hand, clapped him on the back, hugged his mother when she arrived, frail but smiling. From the hospital, for the first time in years, Riverbend Gardens felt like a true community, not a kingdom. In the weeks that followed, the emergency gates were permanently unlocked. Marilyn's illegal contracts were voided. A new HOA board, elected fairly by the residents, promised transparency and compassion. Nathan often sat with Evelyn on her porch, watching kids ride bikes and families barbecue, small, beautiful signs that peace had returned. "You saved us," Evelyn whispered once, her voice thick with emotion. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "No, Mom," he said. "We saved each other. Because sometimes, one voice raised at the right moment can shatter even the tallest throne. And sometimes, justice doesn't come with a roar. It comes with the quiet satisfaction of knowing you stood up when it mattered most."